you read our Constitution, presidents don't have the rights they've taken. It's just by incrementalism, it's grown into the tornado you've got right now. Trump on day one, this cycle has taken it into the stratosphere because he believes what Nixon believed, that if the president does anything, it must be legal.
I suppose we can go back to the founders and the idea of what is the presidency, that George Washington was the right man for the moment, like Cincinnatus, he laid down power and went home to his plow, setting a kind of precedent. But the test came early on. The test of the president versus the legislative branch, the test of the president versus the judicial branch with Marbury versus Madison. And here you have with Trump, somebody who says, almost to echo Andrew Jackson, who defied judicial orders, Supreme Court orders, saying essentially, yeah, you and whose army? Who's going to enforce this? Where does that leave us?
Important again, Pat. All of what you just said. Look, George Washington had to invent the job. He did not. He was a reluctant first president. Was a Revolutionary War hero after the Battle of Yorktown. His stock could have been higher, but in the end, he was the only leader out of the Revolutionary War that could have kept the slave-owning South and the industrial, non-slaving North together. Because Washington was loved in his home state of Virginia, but he was also loved in New York, where at Newburgh, West Point, he guarded the Hudson River, or in New Jersey, where he won the Battle of Princeton and Trenton. And Washington got inaugurated in New York, and he went try to figure out what to do. And it dawned on him that you only go 2 terms. It was not a constitutional amendment, but he served 2, and he was asked to say 3, said no. And he only used one bit of one executive order, because if you read our Constitution, presidents don't have the rights they've taken. It's just by incrementalism, it's grown into the tornado you've got right now. He signed one for the Neutrality Act to keep America out of wars with Spain or Britain, France, try to be neutral. And it really was, as you rightfully point out, with Marbury versus Madison, 19th century, early republic. It's about the power of the Congress and the legislature. They have the purse strings and the power of the Supreme Court. Nobody thought of presidents as being quite the deity, except in 1800, our country created the two-party system, and that shocked the founders. I mean, it was Jefferson representing the Democrat Republicans, and Hamilton, and John Adams, the Federalist, and they went at loggerheads. It was brutal in 1800, and people went in despair.
Hi, I'm Janice, and I am co-founder of Jews United for Democracy and Justice, as well as the America at a Crossroads weekly virtual town hall series. If you like this video, don't just watch. Head over to our website where you can subscribe for early access to new programs, see our upcoming schedules, and participate in our weekly live streams. You can also connect directly with our guests live on Zoom. Head over to JewsUnitedForDemocracy.org. Thanks for watching.
How do you run a democracy if each side gets that ardent against each other? And one aspect came out is when we get a president we think is good, we inflate them a lot. I mean, it was conscious effort to make Washington, the District of Columbia, Washington, named after, the general and the first president, or Washington State or Washington counties. Washington's on everybody listening's dollar bill or on the quarter. And he's like a patriarchal figure. They go to Washington, D.C., and no building can be taller than the Washington Monument. And we periodically did that in the 19th century. Jefferson is one of the founders. But Jefferson said he didn't even want his name's not on his tombstone. He refused to have it say President of the United States because he thought that was a service. And instead, he was founder of the University of Virginia, or author of the Declaration, et cetera. So the big moment in presidential power, some people call executive order number 1, was Abraham Lincoln, because in the middle of the Civil War, he ended up issuing towards the end the Emancipation Proclamation. and in one swoop of the pen, basically doing away with slavery. Although, even with that, there were caveats. If you stayed in the Union, you could keep slaves, addressing that to Maine and Kentucky and places. But that became giant. Wow, Lincoln freed the slaves. But again, it became more Supreme Court and Senate Congress, and then Theodore Roosevelt at the beginning of the 20th century he's the one who it used to be called the Executive Mansion. Theodore Roosevelt's the one who names it the White House. And from 1901 to 1909, TR starts using presidential power in unprecedented ways because he didn't want to be flummoxed by a Senate Congress. And if you like what TR does, like saving the Grand Canyon, so they didn't want it for a national park, so he used an executive authority to declare it, you applaud it. But when a president then does something that one might consider heinous, like FDR using an executive order for Japanese internment camps in World War II, you're saying, why is a president able to do that? But it's the Roosevelts that built both of them. By FDR's time, 4 terms, he did 3,400 executive orders.
During the Depression and wartime, which we do not have either, at least so far
That's the
right
big
now.
thing. And he did Depression and wartime. And then like in wartime, he used the Manhattan Project was an executive order.
Hmm.
But it's more limited. I mean, you'll find like Eisenhower with going to Little Rock, executive order. John F. Kennedy created the Peace Corps. But it started getting used by Barack Obama, new presidential power. If we recall, when Obama won his historic election in 2004, I'm sorry, 2008, and in 2009, he ended up doing Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, and that was big. And he got it through barely, cost of the Great Recession, all Democratic votes. Mitch McConnell said, I'll not talk to or do any business with Obama. And then the Tea Party movement started. And Obama, for being such a brilliant campaigner politician, was able to win a second term, but it was closer than we remember, really. Mitt Romney was in there till really the last debate. And he had killed or led the killing of Osama bin Laden, Obama, which gave him this kind of commander-in-chief credential. But he then became Obama, basically had to get around Congress, Senate, sign executive orders, and that to get around it, and that's continued, whether it's Donald Trump or Joe Biden. But Trump on day one, this cycle has taken it into the stratosphere because he believes what Nixon believed, that if the president does anything, it must be legal.
Next time we have, as you see on the screen, Andrew Weissman talking with Warren Olney. After that, David Axelrod with Madeline Brand. A big lineup of big hitters all through the summer, so you can come back here and we can keep up with us and with the doings and changes that are going on in Washington, D.C. and around the world. I'm Pat Morrison. We sure appreciate you joining us this evening.